Welcome to the AI Think Tank podcast, the future of intelligent systems, machine learning, and data science. I'm Dan Wilson, coming to you from Seattle, Washington. Today we'll be discussing the AI skills gap with Mike Spaeth. Mike is the Global Vice President at the United States Artificial Intelligence Institute, where he leads global strategy and drives the adoption of industry-leading AI certifications, training, and consulting. With over 2 decades of experience in AI and public policy, Mike has worked with major companies like Microsoft, Google, and IBM. At the United States AI Institute, he plays a key role in transforming AI education, offering a range of certifications that equip professionals and organizations with the skills needed to thrive in the AI-driven economy. Welcome to the show, Mike. How's it going?
Good. Excited to be on the AI Think Tank podcast today.
Yeah, it's so great to have you. Man, it's been a very busy series of months for both of us, it seems, between traveling and writing and doing R&D and helping educate others. I don't get a lot of time to put these shows out, so it's really refreshing to get to sit down with you after all this time. It's very serendipitous that we met too, as educators of sorts and also leaders in this. You work with policy and a lot of education at the United States AI Institute. And in looking at all of your materials and what your team does, I'm very impressed with the caliber of content and just the perspectives that you guys hold there. It's very impressive. And you're the vice president. And so you have a very good view of what's going on there. And so let's talk about what you're doing and how you got here. So what led you to working with AI and policy and leadership like this?
Yeah, Daniel, actually my career started on the policy side.
Hmm.
Out of college, I got my master's in public policy
Hmm.
and went to DC, where I had the opportunity to work for our local US senator and even spent time on the Clinton Gore staff
Hmm.
to, to date myself. But after after a career in public policy based on timing, the internet had just launched.
Hmm.
And at that point, I said, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity, and went on an interview with no experience.
Hmm.
And, at this point, there really wasn't a lot of experience needed because they were hiring so fast. So
Hmm.
one interview I went on, they immediately were like, okay, your desk is over there. You're starting. You're
Hmm.
starting today.
Right, right. Yeah, having anybody that has a good policy background is probably a rare find for that and a good pick, obviously, especially with what you've been involved with and your perspectives on this. I mean, now more than ever, change management is necessary at every level for everybody, and understanding how to manage your own change and augmentation of your workflows, and upskilling yourself in whatever way you need. I run into a lot of people who use AI on the daily and still lack particular tooling that goes along with that, or know-how, or just understanding the limitations of that car. It's a very amorphous thing. It's very vague. It's behind this curtain, of the internet, and there's all these rack servers somewhere, cranking away compute. But to us, it's hard to understand those limitations. Like, where is that? A lot of people don't think about the limitation of their context window. A lot of people aren't thinking about dirtying their conversation with other information that may change what could be a golden thread into something that's convoluted. But it's clear that we do need this sort of light in the dark and guidance and upskilling right now. I know for a fact from, again, talking to so many people who are involved in it, but even people who aren't involved in it have a pretty good handle on it once you give them the right information. This does not need to be a mystery or mystical. Okay. So that's where you come in, and your group over there at the USAI Institute. So let's talk about your programs and what you guys are aiming to do.
Yeah, and I think you said it best, Daniel. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't have to be a mystery
Mm-hmm.
or mystical, right? I think we need to focus on the intro. I think a lot of it can be intimidating to, as example, intimidating. This is like my family, my parents, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a lot out there we need to do to make it digestible
Yeah.
for, I think in our industry, a lot of times we use, buzzwords that can be
Yes.
intimidating.
Uh-huh. It
Can,
really, yeah, that can muddy the waters a little bit, or if they're clear and everybody's using the same thing, it can be great. But it's not easy. Even if you're involved in development, there are terms that are go both ways, that are used different ways, you know. So it's a lot to look at, and a lot of words are pulled from other. Industries as well. So some people might think that means one thing when it actually means something else. And so I see a lot of that, and I have to be careful every day and consider what I think I know versus what's really going on, and double check that, against what's there. Now you have some pretty interesting background though as well. You were working at IBM. You were a global director of generative AI at Earth Daily, and then you worked along with Microsoft, Google, and IBM on some projects. Care to talk about that? And
yeah. So
about, yeah, what's your perspectives for gained there?
yeah, at IBM, I was lucky enough to be there when Watson
Oh yeah.
beat
Hmm.
Jeopardy, which was, that was a big deal. And,
Yeah.
AI, obviously, as you know, has been around a long time, maybe even
Hmm.
back to the Turing machine.
Oh yes.
Yep.
Right. Alice and others actually. So it goes pretty far back. And I mean, even considering you probably have some friends in the government who've had access to AI systems that were used kind of like we use them today, but decades ago. Um, and that's real. It's kind of
Yep.
incredible, how long these things sit, for a while before they come out. But that's life in the US, this is how we do it. What is it like? Mattel put out the Apache helicopter and for GI Joe before it was declassified, and Mattel made all the gun stocks for, a lot of rifles back in the day. So it's really funny how information comes out, right? So, and how we see it. So, but yeah, Watson it was so incredible and such a big deal. Um, and along with seeing this technology, I'm sure it helps aid your policy making process and gives you a better breadth of understanding, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Especially in
Hmm.
the case of USAII, we
Hmm.
work very closely with governments. We work
Hmm.
very closely with city governments, state
Oh,
governments,
yeah.
country
Uh-huh.
governments. I know you
Sure.
and I are talking about the government of Malaysia.
That's
You know,
right. Hmm.
yeah, we're working on a program to certify their citizens across the board
Uh-huh.
via USAII and partners in Malaysia
Right.
to ensure that their citizens are upskilled. So
Right.
it does tie into public policy and the fact that it needs to, right? There
Hmm.
needs to be leadership from the
That's
local
right.
level, state level, country level to
Uh-huh.
make sure the citizens are upskilled.
Right. And in step and on the same page, with what the common goals are and where those are. Because if you spend time in this world of policy making and doing research for these types of things and growing areas and anywhere really where there's change happening and growth, you'll find that not everybody needs all of this information, and a lot of people aren't going to care at the bottom of this pool. We are all end users, no matter where you're at in the chain, right? If you're working at a government level or working with critical infrastructure, you're still an end user, at all, in all of that, right? And then you have the entity as a user itself, sure, with its own policies and rules, but still, there's a lot there. Yeah, let's give some insight to that. I mean, I was involved and I got asked to be a part of the working groups for Malaysia's National AI Office. And I was
Yep.
assigned and joined as an AI and data sovereignty advisor, which I've been doing for over a year now, hands on at Kwai AI, where we make efforts to actually, sort of democratize AI and empower people with their own personal AI infrastructure that's not snooped on, and for the ability to manage agents and digital twins and your own data however you see fit. And so there are a lot of angles on this. And so I brought my knowledge to my working groups, and we worked for around 4 months on this. And we just finished our final round of deliverables the other day, and we impacted the direction of things with what we found, and it was really great. And then you and I both agree, and Malaysia is actually ahead of the U.S. in certain factors too. It's it's a trade-off. Like you have a place like the United States that has the budget and the infrastructure. Okay, one begets the other, right? But
Right.
places like France, for example, have a better policy and better rules to protect the average citizen. We have the Cloud Act here. Okay, I'm not going to go on about that. France has the Cloud de Confiance, which actually is like a stamp of approval and a standard for cybersecurity. So, if you're a government agency or working in critical infrastructure, your AI software and other applications must meet a cybersecurity standard. Because sovereignty does not come without security. You can have a great car, but if you don't lock the doors, you know what I mean, or you leave the windows down, right? What security is there? And so we worked long and hard on that. And I was so lucky to have a group of doers and people who were involved at various levels of infrastructure, from undersea cables to satellite systems and data centers. And it was exciting. And now I've moved on to other countries that have been asked to participate at the same level around the world. And so, but therein, you and we get to see this perspective of a place that is just coming up in this, doing a better job with more clarity because of clear policies, because of education, and the things that you guys are doing there. I was just tickled to hear it. Um, because I care about that. I care about the community and I care about that open approach, the open source, of course, but just to make it welcome for everybody to learn and to grow. And again, this isn't important for everybody. Not everybody needs AI for something. I don't like to force fit technology anywhere. People first, food, water, shelter, all that, culture, love, family. That's what's most important, not technology. But if it can get us more of those things better, great, let's do it, right? So, but you work, the USAII is working directly with companies that ask them to be there in Malaysia. You guys were asked to do this, right? As you told me, and brought directly in. So to me, that was a clear sign. And in looking at your actual certifications and the scope of focus, there's not anyone really left behind at the USAII. You guys have some great policies and certifications for everyone, from K-12 to leaders. It's very nice to see this. So, can you tell me about what's next and what you guys are focusing on the most right now in terms of the educational outreach?
Yeah, definitely. And Daniel, I think you and I, prior to this conversation, had a one in a million instance where you said, "I'm going to be in Malaysia in 2 weeks," and I said, "Wait, I'm going to be in Malaysia in 2 weeks."
It's
And
right,
I
exactly.
don't think that has ever happened in the history of the world, that type of conversation. But it makes sense when you
Uh-huh.
look back on the focus that Malaysia has
Hmm.
on training their citizens, right? And you said
That's
it,
right.
Malaysia or any country who's on the forefront of
Mhm.
making sure their citizens have adopted AI, has the opportunity to be a leader in the world stage.
Right,
You know, is
right.
it?
And their trust, like if you, the recent studies and reports are showing that in countries that are, and I hate to say they're like developing countries, just because we have all this infrastructure doesn't make us better in any way. Okay.
Yep.
But people who are just now getting into it have more trust in AI and are less skeptical of its practical usage than the Western world. And this is a study. This is recent, like in the
Right.
last week or so, okay? Which is odd. And I have a lot of friends, as you can imagine, between being an entertainer and working in science and technology. I have a lot of friends, and I'm always shocked when people don't use it or don't know it can do a certain thing. And I'm just thinking, this is just like using Google search. Everybody uses it and finds all kind of things. Why aren't people using these tools like this, right? Now, I do have a few friends that really focus on it and realized right away to adopt it. And I'm talking about artists and musicians and not just people working with math or science or anything like that or directly with AI integrations, right? And so I was always tickled to see that the first people that I knew that adopted it were the artists, people who create with their hands paintings, beautiful masterpieces, right? Art masters, and then turn around and take and digitize that and put it into video game like 3D CGI type stuff. And then later on are using whatever tool comes out next. These same people were doing claymation. I grew up doing claymation in the 80s, actually. I love this stuff. So, in terms of application and tooling, it's a no-brainer to embrace different aspects of it. And even some of the artists that didn't use it as heavily, that I know personally, would use it to create certain assets, like AI generated assets, and then they would work with that and do something to it. So, it was just another ball of clay, right? Um, and likewise, I have musician friends who use it for a myriad of things. And for some of us out there, I mean, if you said, "Well, there's no AI, what do musicians do to cheat and learn to do all kind of things?" Oh, we'll flip on YouTube and bring up a backing track. Right? It's for you to play bass too, or you to play piano too, but here's the drums and the guitar and the vocals, and they're going at it or whatever. And there's not cheating, right? And so I can go on Suno and I can create a backing track for myself with everything but the instrument I'm playing and do that and go, "Oh, okay, cool, great way to draft out," right? It's not
Right.
taking anything from me, it's helping me, right? And that's easy. But where it comes down to, I feel like that you have to be very careful, is when you're starting to involve yourself with the exactitude of math and science,
Hmm.
okay, and knowledge, to be clear, it's concise and to be correct. Because if you start throwing math problems at the AI, at an LLM, it's not geared for that. And it's just going to guess its way to some number that may or may not be correct. It's an extrapolation. And so I feel like a lot of the education that I'm seeing right now is just, it's important, is showing people the limits. It's kind of like a car. It can go this fast. If you do this, you're
Yep.
going to fly off the road. You're going to lose traction. You'll lose your slip angle. There's a lot of the trajectory of this thing is sort of like the course of a conversation thread, right? And so a lot of people just, they deserve to see that limit and where some of those limits are to make it easier to use, right? So, so I really appreciate what you guys are doing over there at the Institute. And
No, thank you.
also with just getting the perspectives of where those limits are in knowledge management is so key. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just saying or thinking, Daniel, that you mentioned car a few times.
Hmm.
And I recently have a use case that I wanted to share with your listeners.
Hmm.
2 weeks ago, I was in a car accident. And
Oh,
it,
good.
it wasn't a bad car accident.
Hmm.
Nobody was hurt, but I was shooken up. And actually, I had a concussion. And thankfully, I was able to rely on AI to kind of give me guidance on what to do next,
Hmm.
right? I was groggy for like 2 days,
Oh,
not
my
thinking
God.
straight, but I had this asset where I could be like, okay, I was in a car accident. Tell me what I should do in next steps. And it said, contact your insurance company, then get this, then go that, and this will
Uh,
happen. Ask these questions. And then it said, would you like me to do that for you?
oh,
And I
wow.
was considering the state I was in, I was like, that would be great. So, you know,
Wow.
yeah, yeah,
What
I
AI were
used,
you using? What were you using on your phone to do that?
yeah, on my phone, I have ChatGPT
Uh-huh.
and $20 a month service. So I have some ability to use deep research.
Oh, yeah.
And
Uh-huh.
yeah, I went through the whole process, exactly what I need to do. So when I wasn't at my cognitive best, it was
Hmm.
a great asset to
Yeah,
use.
yeah. It's one. Yeah, don't go to sleep. Don't take a nap. You have a concussion. It's probably giving you all the recipes to see
It
you can get to
did
that
tell
right
me that.
place. I've had this
Yeah.
situation happen to me once, but it was a very funny slapstick situation where I was at in my friend's kitchen and I slipped on a piece of paper that came off the refrigerator. It was like a note. Just the right
Right.
timing, and I slipped and spun, and the back of my head hit the sink in the cabinet, and I hit every rung of it on the way down like a cartoon and
Right.
broke the
Oh,
cabinet. And I woke up on the ground, and my friends were looking at me. It was very much like a movie. It was very funny, and I had to stay up, and
right.
outlast everybody through that. What would have been a concussion or something. So I was okay, but I was worried, and I didn't have anything to help me but a few people, and then they went to sleep, and then it was just me. I'm thinking, all right, I'm gonna stay up for some hours here. So it's good to have help.
You had,
Especially,
yeah, if you
yeah,
had AI at that moment, you could have just pulled it out of your pocket and been like, I fell down, hit my head multiple times.
yeah.
What should I do now?
Yeah,
Right.
right, exactly. So, yeah, that's wild. So so you use ChatGPT app. What are some other AI apps that you like to use, and what for?
Well, at the USAII, we're actually technology vendor agnostic.
Good.
So we don't focus on this app. We obviously
Mhm.
will teach our students on technology like MCP and
Yes.
various other technologies that
Hmm.
they can use, but we
Hmm.
don't stress, one vendor over
Good.
the other. We're
Hmm.
really focusing on, okay, here's some of the use cases, and we do focus on
Hmm.
based on specific tracks. So if you have a technical background, you would get this certification. If
Hmm.
you're a C-level leader, you would focus on this certification.
Hmm.
If you were foundational entry level, you'd focus on this. So we've
Hmm.
broken it down by expertise.
Yeah.
And one of the exciting things we're now doing is also breaking it down by vertical. So we could say HR, we could say a certification for supply chain. So
Hmm.
giving the executives, citizens, the ability, students, the ability to say, okay, this is where I am in my journey, so I'm going to take this certification.
Right. No, those are important too because there's so many out there that you could take, right? And a lot of people think, oh, I'm going to get a certification that's like for developers or, someone maintaining that to some degree, some technical thing. But honestly, it's important to have the efficacy that comes with the training, no matter what you use, okay, being familiar with just the ins and outs in general makes sense. It's like you could drive any car you want, but we're going to teach you about how cars work in general, right? That's how I see it a lot of times, man. Sorry to bring the car up again, but
Oh,
anyway, um, but these are really key because it's just a clear path to competency, is how I see it. Okay. Whereas if you're non-technical and you go, well, Coursera, there's all these other places you could learn, Google, Microsoft, you could get a certification, training for it, but it's highly technical and it's usually beyond the scope of what a
right.
given person might need. Okay. And it actually hurts the learning process to have all that stuff you don't need there. Less is more, right? Let's just get to the point. And so, but you said you also, educate at the government level, which I admit can be very tricky, you know. Um,
Well, in
you
some ways, it's the government's responsibility
hmm.
to train and upskill the citizens.
Oh,
And I was
right.
even thinking about this the other day. It's like,
Hmm.
what if two towns bordered each other and one town made all the citizens AI proficient? Let's say there's the same amount of people, 10,000 in each town. So the 10,000 who are AI proficient will be able to answer questions quickly on things like their own home. And
Hmm.
then the city government, police, firemen can answer questions on, wait a minute, how many traffic lights do we need based on this information,
Hmm.
information? Police can say, okay, ChatGPT, we have this many citizens, this many incidents. What should we focus on in the next
Hmm.
month? And if you
Hmm.
put those two towns next to each other, it's going to be obvious though one
Right.
town
Uh-huh.
is going to
Yeah.
succeed while the other
Yeah.
town may fall behind.
Hmm.
And you're
That's
also
true.
talking about the students within one town.
Hmm.
So we have
Right.
certifications for K through 12. So we're getting the students upskilled, the entire citizens base. So even at that very granular level, you can see the power of what AI certification, training, upskilling could do just
Hmm.
for the common citizen.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously, you live in Seattle, right? So
Hmm.
probably you're in the one city where you're actually in the epicenter, right?
That's right. I am. Yeah. That's it. I'm right down in the middle of it. I'm downtown. I'm right down the street from Amazon, Microsoft, Google, a lot of other players as well. I might add this whole area is rich with startups for AI. I am one of them. I am InfoScience AI LLC here in Seattle,
Yeah.
and, working with neuromorphic memory systems and a lot of other things. So yeah, it's hot here, and there's
Oh,
just so much going on, and the infrastructure's present. And everybody on the West Coast really has it made for infrastructure, and really anywhere in America, but the West Coast is just a seething hotbed of development in every way that you could shake a stick at. Okay, from what I do at home here, and building agents from scratch to, people in communities and actual new technology coming out. It's so exciting. I always want to get down to California for stuff. I'm not gonna lie. I love it up here, but California is just there's such a draw. I was there the other day for the RSA convention in San Francisco, and that was wonderful. And getting to see the CISOs of OpenAI, Meta,
Wow.
Anthropic, and AWS all talk on stage right in front of me and tell me about all these new security risks and things and new technologies and what's available. I took a lot from that. I've given talks since then from the things I learned, even to give insight and safety tips to people. But it's an incredible ecosystem that we have, and
Mhm.
like you said with Malaysia, and what you said, they're already doing things in a more consistent manner, growing and building from scratch. Where it's the Wild West out here, man. Like there's all kind of sovereign nets if you want to make them, and in that we mean private and secure and no one snooping on your data, right? That's sovereign in that sense, but and private. But you and I are in a very great position to get to use the tools, right? And try things out as they happen with really no limitation. We just, unless there's something you have to pay for, we just get access to it being where we are. And and it just either it works quick and we find out and we use it, or we just get, going to the next thing, right? It's not as easy in other places. Okay. And then sometimes there are laws or things that prevent people from even accessing a certain technology, depending on where you are, and that's going away. That's changing to certain degrees. But I'm trying to spread and I'm working to spread the independence that comes with
Mhm.
owning your own technology, running your own infrastructure to the smallest degree, at the edge, at home, on your home hardware, and to empower the individual to the degree where they know, well, I could build a car, or I could buy a car, or I could rent a car. You know what I mean? It's this whole, I need to get from point A to point B. I need this tool to do it for me. Um, every car is different in certain ways. Some are made for hauling, some are for speed. These different models have different use cases. The platforms themselves are really what people are experiencing more than the actual model itself. You know what I mean? It's really that management system that, an LLM can't access the internet. The platform that supports it does, though, right? That framework. Uh, there are a lot of little ins and outs where you go, wait a minute, this thing can't go out and do stuff without me unless I give it all the power to and the authentic keys to do so, and that's where agents coming into play. It's going to be the next trend for a while, not just this year, but going forward for the next 5 years. It's going to be, this is what I hear. Okay. And this is what I'm seeing. It's going to be a phenomenal difference. And like you said, with MCP and, the education and insight that you guys are providing over at USAII, that's the next thing for people to look out for and start using. And of course, secure implementations of that and being very
Yep.
careful about how we cross integrate with these things. So go ahead and let's talk about some things in change management with everything. You and I have some similar values in a lot of this. So let's see. So we talk a lot about augmentation and people losing jobs over AI. And this week and last week have been a clear indicator, between Microsoft, laying off, what was it, 3% of their workforce, which sounds like not much, but it is a lot. And they do this, but a lot of other people are doing things like this too. Other companies that are maybe not as tech heavy are still doing this. And so what would you like to share with us today about, the change management and all this, the training and just the upskilling of everybody who might not be technical, what are you seeing? How do you feel about this?
Well, in Seattle related, I also saw the letter by Andy Jassy from
Hmm.
Amazon that made it clear that they're going to bring some jobs into whether it's AI agents or AI enabled.
Hmm.
And that's one of the reasons or main reason I decided to go to USAII is that I didn't want to see people left behind. I
Yeah,
didn't want to see 20% employment because it moved too fast.
right.
And the technology is moving unbelievably fast, as you know better than anybody else being in Seattle. I
Hmm.
just was in Seattle 3 or 4 months ago
Hmm.
and had the opportunity to go to Microsoft and Google and Allen Institute.
Oh yeah, man. A2I right down the road here. I love
Yeah,
those guys so much. They're so wonderful. Yeah.
one of my favorites.
Uh-huh.
Uh, and we can't forget them because what
Uh-huh.
they're doing and what's coming out of there is truly groundbreaking. And
Scholar
really,
AI, right? Isn't that the Scholar AI group?
yeah,
Oh, that yeah, that I use that plugin so much. I think I told you I love them, and they have such an open effort. How did you get in their building? It's so hard to get in contact with them. I
well,
always feel
there's
like I
more
have to
to
stand there with
do.
a pizza and sneak in to go talk to them. They're so busy. But anyways, I joke about this for a while now. But
Well, there's
yeah,
multiple buildings too, right?
uh-huh,
That
yeah,
makes it hard, but obviously it's not as many buildings as
right,
Microsoft has
uh-huh.
on their campus. I think they've gone past numbers of buildings and they're into numbers and letters.
Oh
The
yeah,
campus is just
uh-huh.
unbelievably impressive.
It
It,
used to be, yeah, just one Microsoft way. That was the road, that still exists. I used to go by there a lot. That was a real clear path, their way of doing it. But yeah, like it's a rich ecosystem. But again, with A2I, they're educators, and they truly create. Olmo 2 came out not too long ago, and that's an open model with open weights. And it's very open. It's truly open, and which is rare because a lot of people talk about open models or open weights, but the model isn't really open. And if you use it a certain way, you're limited. And it's not the MIT license all the time. You can't just commercially dive in on some of these models, right? So, but yeah, they work a lot with just helping researchers too, and I
yeah,
have just found ultimate value in what they provide. It's a beautiful thing. So
the
yeah,
talent,
yeah. So
the talent,
you,
the talent at Allen Institute and the talent in Seattle is bar none, right?
yeah.
But with AI, it can also level set that where other cities can have the same amount of talent
Hmm.
because you can add the capabilities
Yes.
of AI. And in my
Hmm.
career, I came from a space company,
Hmm.
and I'm not a rocket scientist, but I would have to go to the actual rocket experts, the
Hmm.
imagery experts with questions.
Hmm.
And, they're busy, right? They could get
Yeah.
back to you in a week, maybe later.
Hmm.
And with ChatGPT, and this has happened my whole career, with ChatGPT, I could then produce a response and document that
Hmm.
was equal to what they can do. So my whole career was like waiting for a response from somebody technical. And now I no longer
Hmm.
have to wait because I would be like, you know what? I just did
Yeah.
half out. I don't have to wait a week anymore.
Uh-huh, right, right. Yeah, I did and also, I mean, you do that, but then you double check what you do, triple check it in different ways. If I use, for example, if you do research with a model that's, let's say, any model really, but maybe you're not paying for it, right? Maybe you're using free OpenAI or something, or something out there like Bing Chat, I don't know. And you do research and it goes out on the internet and it grabs everything and puts it together. I mean, a lot of times it's pretty accurate, okay? And things used to not be quite like that, where if it wasn't able to go on the internet, it would just fabricate something as an answer when it didn't know, right? Like you for whatever reason you run out of context window and whatever details are lost and they're gone now and the context frame has moved down to whatever the conversation's about. It never was reincorporated in and suddenly it lost a variable. Let's say you're writing code and
Yeah.
it forgot, literally it's out of the context window now. It's off the page and as good as erased, and it doesn't know that variable, so it generates one, it creates one. And we've had instances and studies on this where we found that people were like, "Yeah, I was skilled developers using it to help them write something, are all of a sudden running into problems where, oh wow, it just changed the name of the variable. It came up with something. So you really have to double check your work. But you're right, it would have taken weeks to get the information just because a person's unavailable. It takes 10 or 15 minutes to cough up. And deep
Yeah.
research is a really great tool for that too. So,
Yeah, I
just,
think on the side of hallucinations, right? A year
yeah.
ago, that was a word that was commonly used,
Hmm.
probably rightfully so.
Yeah.
But now, a year later, you
Hmm.
don't, that word is not spoken because I can't remember seeing something that was a hallucination.
Yeah, you'd have to get down to working with the math of things to find that. You would have to start working with such large corpus of information. Like for example, I write creating this agent system. I'll get it to look at my code, and about 2,500 lines of code is where it starts to choke up, right?
Oh,
But you wouldn't
interesting.
know unless you were the one writing all that code. You have to know your content, right? For example, I could take a show or a meeting, and I take the transcript from the meeting and I clean the data, make sure all the names are labeled properly, and feed it
Right.
to an AI bot that I build that's, let's say, with a small model on local hardware, give it that information and get it to write a report and bring out things. It will hallucinate a few things. It will
Hmm.
leave some things out. It won't catch some things, depending on how large that data is in its context window. And if you take and you create, ingest the data into a naive RAG system, okay, which is retrieval augmented generation, you're just uploading some documents, that information gets vectorized and you might not ever get a pure quote out of it. Okay.
Hmm.
It's not all there. It's not quite the same. It's like being a human and being an animal, all this in real life, like we don't keep all the data in our heads. We throw out a lot of erroneous data. That doesn't help us. Like, just give me the details that matter. I don't need to know what color tie you were wearing. I need to know where you were and what time, right? Things like that. And but the hallucinations, like we have to, it's like a lot of my friends and I in this industry talk about that these things are made to hallucinate. That's what it does. It's
Oh.
inferencing and it is fabricating something based on what it has. It's sort of putting together with blocks, right? But there's a point where it doesn't have a block, it fabricates a block. And here this Lego block comes into place and it's not real, right? So I've seen this not just with math.
Okay.
I have seen it with large, text documents. So let's say a book even, right? There are limitations to that. So I find that if I get into a project and I know I'm going to be dealing with a lot of data and I'm using certain platforms like OpenAI, or Gemini 2.5 Pro, it's awesome. Like 2
Right.
million uh, token limit context window. However that works out, may or may not use it. But when you start running out, you might not know either, right? So it's important to realize that I might need to break something into sections to work on it and maybe not throw the whole thing on it at once, right? So there's tricks, there's techniques, and then there are times when it surprises you and it's accurate. Okay.
Right.
So if it does math, if you say, "Hey, ChatGPT, what's 1,450 times a six-digit number?" Right? When it does this weird it triangulates all these extrapolations of well, because of this, therefore this. It's not actually doing math, you know? If it was, they would give you a floating point limit. So you have a calculator in your hand. We all know regular basic calculators like what, 8 digits across, right? And you get
Right.
1.7 floating points, right? Well, if AI is able to do math when it is in the future and it's built into the model, they'll have a limit that you'll know. They should be able to tell you it's accurate up to these amount of numbers, and otherwise it can't do it. Fortunately, for people who use these larger platforms, the framework is handling a lot of the math on the back end with things like Python, like a Python shell, a sandbox. Canvas is what we call it. A lot of these things have the Canvas feature where you can go back and edit it, whatever you wrote or code or what have you. It can even try to run that and let you know if it works or not to a degree. But a lot of these tools, again, they will have limits that we're not even told, right? So
Right.
when I find them, I'm like, oh, okay, all right, I can't trust it for this. But I don't like to trust it at all. Math and science isn't about trust. It's about confirmation. It's about
Right.
like, truly deducing and determining and not guessing and just predicting, right? You can be really accurate predicting, and half the time you wouldn't know better. Like, oh, I'm really good at flipping coins and guessing, right? It's just the way it is. You may never know until you get your head under the hood. So, but that's key. I mean, that's what you guys are doing over at USAII is you're being, non-focused on one thing and just get to use all the tools and understand the generality is so much more important. So, and it's nice. It's not nice to have, reskilling is necessary. It's important. You can't just wait around for things to get easier and go, oh, I hope, I'll fit in later. Just get your hands wet right now. Get your hands dirty right now and start using these tools. Um, and you said deep research you like to use, right?
Oh yeah,
Uh-huh.
it's
Yeah,
fantastic,
it really is. Yeah.
yeah, I like what you just said in nice to have, right? Like in
Hmm.
the past, being an expert in Excel, understanding Word or PowerPoint. For a long time, that was nice to have, right? For a
Yeah.
long period of time.
Hmm.
Here, we passed the nice to have,
Oh
right? And
yeah.
there
Yeah.
is, a sense of urgency
Hmm.
because I can see it getting better and better
Hmm.
day by
That's
day,
right.
month by month. It's starting to move faster than even I can recognize.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
It's like every week a new tool comes out from the same platform, and you're like, okay, uh, well, let me find my use case for that and throw it in there. Or that one puzzle that the other models couldn't figure out. Let's see if O3 can do it. Let's see if Mo 4 Mini can do it. I mean, and you cannot count on things to stay the same, and they shouldn't, right? But where it is needing to be sandboxed and it needs to possibly be on premises and private and local secure sovereign AI is when you
right,
don't want things to change and you're relying on a system that wash, rinse, repeat. You have a data pipeline you've built and it works great for ingesting data and getting it from your data lakes and stores and then propagating that however for people to use for analysis or what have you. You don't want that to change, man. Back in
right, right.
2023, fellow developers and we all would just go, yeah, they're A/B testing us again at OpenAI, right? Yeah, they changed that model. My API doesn't work the same anymore. I'm getting different results, and it was happening like when you least expected it, and you're like, okay, whatever. You throw your hands in the air, and then I had a lot of friends, and I started getting into running local models on our home hardware, or open,
Okay,
or to some degree, And I have about 60 or 70 models I run at home that I've tested. There's probably about 10 of them that are really the top hitters for everything I want from coding to actual general use or instruction handling. But I use them for proof of concept. I use them to help me test. I use them for coding agents that I build at home, and it's phenomenal. But when people talk about agents, though, too, you're getting close to agents there when you use the deep research, right?
yeah. Well, first of
And,
all, I'm impressed
uh-huh.
what your setup at home must be like
It's
because
cheap. It's cheap. It's not impressive. I'm using a domed down gaming system with maybe a 12 gigabyte NVIDIA card, and I can run
right,
two models at the same time that are automatically coding and developing software, automatically installing libraries if they don't have them, or updating the Python libraries when needed, and running it automatically and debugging it automatically until there's a final output, and that's the end of the road. But it's
right,
not a true agent. We throw that word around a lot, but a true agent has this other ability to keep going and doing stuff. And mine, I want to get to a resolute point and report. And so that's my end result for that agent that I built. But when it's working, it does so agentically. And it does it through a loop of problem solving, and it does it
mhm,
all locally and securely and quickly with no frameworks. I'm not using any known
wow,
frameworks. I'm not using A2A. I'm not using
wow,
N8N. I'm not using, MCP. I'm building my own homebrew neuromorphic memory systems for ingestion and long-term memory. That's part of my secret sauce. Okay, that's something I'm not giving up right now. But it takes having the right setup at home. But you can do it with Windows, Linux, or Mac. So
great,
nobody's left behind. You know, and you can even use your CPU. You don't even have to use a fancy graphic card. Not that mine was fancy. It was $280, right?
right,
I should have got a 16, but this is what I got. Okay. But right now you can run, let's say, that you got two NVIDIA cards, or you got one that had maybe 32 gigabytes of RAM on it. Hey,
right,
now you're talking. Now you can run one of the larger middle-sized models, and it will be more accurate for certain reasons. It will have a larger knowledge base of corpus that's built into it. So that's where I kind of math things out. It's like taking a road trip. Again, I love the car analogy because I think everybody's got their hands on one at some point in their life, but you know how far you're going to go and how much gas is going to get you there, right? When you choose a tool. And it's just like any tool. Like sometimes I turn to Gemini and it does a great job for some things, and then I try to get to do the next step and it can't. And I'm like, wow, that's really a letdown. And then I go to OpenAI and they can totally do the next step, but certain things are different, and that's fine. I love variety, okay? I've used Grok for things. I've used, Microsoft Copilot in my VS Code to help me with stuff. And several models to choose from. That's not just
right.
one. But the way it works and how far we're coming from we're leaving co-pilots behind and going to agents. That's really what's happening right now. And I've been told this, that's being forced down my throat. Everything I read and ingest is showing me this. And it's just, but that's really where we want it. We don't need so much hand feeding. We don't need so much
Sure.
babying this stuff. We just need tools that work. And by now we're used to a lot of these things that quote just work. Like,
Yeah.
as bulky as it is, like Facebook or Instagram, or this thing just works. I can post this, it works like this. These features are like this, or like Google Docs, or any kind of platforms for, a variety of publishing. There's a lot of ins and outs, but you find it, okay, this is the tool that's going to get me there. Oh, I shouldn't use a spreadsheet for this. I should use a database. This needs to be extensible. I need to have this, I need to graduate from a spreadsheet and put this in a SQL or something, right? So, but
You're-
along the way, you're learning what you need with
yeah.
your
Well, your
tools,
setup
right?
at home sounds perfect for gaming.
It
You
is. Yeah, it's just a gaming
gotta play some
system.
games on that
Yeah.
setup.
Yeah, it's the perfect thing for AI. It's just to just get a gaming system and like on Amazon or something pre-built. It doesn't even matter these days. And
Right.
or hey, if you have the money to spend on the fancy $3,000 NVIDIA little compute desktop situation, you could do that too. And there's a wide amount of those. There's a huge variety. And there's even some single cards that have 64 gigabytes of RAM on it. I've seen. They're
Right.
$20,000 a piece though. No joke. $20,000, 64 gigabytes of RAM. It's NVIDIA.
Wow.
I would be worried for heat.
Yeah.
So, you know,
Your
I
electric
would
bill
be.
too.
Yeah, well, I mean, we need at home NPUs, not GPUs.
Right.
Also, like
But you
NPUs. Yeah, I
you
think we've
find
had
your
this
electric
conversation.
bill, home
Oh,
electric
no, it's not. It's very low. It's very low. I barely have a problem. It's very low. In fact, it's the server center, data centers that have that problem.
right,
But
right, right. I just wondered if yeah, if what you had
yeah, yeah, it's the GPUs are higher, higher amperage, higher power draw, but
right,
NPUs are lower, and a lot of people don't know this. You have your CPU, okay, which we all have that runs our chip, on our computer, and the GPU is a graphic processing unit, and it's very high speed for parallel processing. Think
right,
Bitcoin mining, gaming, all this, rendering things that are all parallel in 3D environments, right? You need that, but an NPU is a neural processing unit. It works differently. It works with low power and it's faster and more effective for inference. And guess what, folks? That's what we're using it for. All us home users out there, all of us people who are like using the AI, using the models for this and that, unless you're training a model, which you need to do quickly. You need to not take a ton of time to do because if it's wrong, you got to go back and change something, right? So it's a lot of wash, rinse, repeat, changing and bug fixing, figuring out what needs to be fine tuned, how and what way, right? And you need a GPU for that because time is money, and then your competition will leave you behind in the dust because you took too
right,
much time, right? But if it's already built, okay, and for what it's worth, if you're just going to use pure inference and let's say my own cloud deployment of open models, if I wanted to do the same thing at home, but like on Azure or
right,
Google or AWS, any of those platforms, you could deploy this and you could have something that's substantial. But again, like you're really it all comes down to just understanding the limits of what you're working with. So you'll know,
mhm,
okay, this is how this fits. This is going to work fine. I don't need to overkill here. I don't need to buy all this other compute. In some of these instances, if you do run in the cloud, a lot of people know the pain of leaving something on. It's a leaky bucket. It's just
right.
constantly draining your money, right? And over at Quai AI, which is our nonprofit in California, we're almost at 1,000 members and we developed our own QuiNet, which is a distributed peer-to-peer fabric compute. So all
Wow.
around the world, we have different nodes running, and they're all hosting us some small models, but good enough to do what we want. And it's a sovereign private infrastructure or system. It's running on a variety of infrastructure, I should say,
Mhm.
from home PCs to Intel's Tiber cloud. They actually gave us $50,000 of cloud credits just to utilize our that for our kind of
That's a
stuff.
big number. I mean,
It's nice,
that's
yeah.
gold.
Perplexity's given us thousands of dollars of credits too to use. Like we're really getting a lot of traction where we're taking things,
Right.
right? And so it's really beautiful to see that and how anybody could do that at home for themselves and for free. But your limitations are going to come down to not having a lot of the fancy bells and whistles like long-term memory management like Chat GPT has now, or
Right.
going out on the web or doing deep research or possibly image generation. It also is a hobbyist leaning where it takes a lot of doing it yourself. It's not always very straightforward or easy, right? So the barrier, the bar to entry is a little higher than just going out and using something ready-made. And I get that. Not everybody's here to be a hobbyist, and I don't. No one should. You should just have accessibility to the tools you need and do it. If you are a developer, then you need the bare minimum to build with to so that you can like create something and not become convoluted in the process, with frameworks and things that don't matter or unnecessary libraries even.
Well,
So
the fact that you got those credits is, congratulations to
oh
you.
yeah, yeah, it's such a big
Amazing.
deal. Yeah, anybody could be a part of it too. Like we're very open, very welcoming. Anybody who wants to participate in this to be a part of it because from educators, a variety of universities, and all the universities that are adopting this technology that we're creating. And again, we have like Harvard professor Bruce Schneier. He's on our board of directors. We have a lot of players in the game. From like Rika Nakazawa was with NVIDIA in the early 90s, and she's also on our board. And she is a visionary technology leader in every sector I have ever seen her in.
Wow.
She's due to be on the show. We have very busy schedules. We're always hit and miss with each other, but I try to have the whole board on. But what we're doing is a proof of concept that works, and other people are going at this too to different degrees. But I have found so much value in it that I use it. And when I need it, I use it with people in a private way where
Right.
we know the data isn't getting snooped. Okay. So let's be clear. If you're working on something that's proprietary and you have information you're feeding to, say, OpenAI or ChatGPT or Google or, like Gemini or anywhere else, okay, it's not really private. It's getting snooped on. And
Right.
somebody at the end of the line has the ability to actually use that data whether you know it or not. And no one's going to stop a criminal. Okay. I'm sorry, but there is no 100% guarantee in that case. Now, if you run your own cloud infrastructure like Azure and you have a private, secure instance of that, okay, it's your own sovereign net, kind of like we have for Quai. The only thing you have to worry about is endpoint security, right? But if you run it at home like I do, there's no endpoint security to worry about except for your router, and you just hope that your computer is safe, right? You see, there's always a
Right.
level of concern. But therein lies that lack of tooling. All of a sudden, I'd have to make sure that whatever system I put together can do all the things that OpenAI can do, which is what I'm doing at home, honestly. So, and it's great that we can approach this, but you might not know where the risk is, right? You might not realize, oh, the data retention policies for all this snooping are actually longer than my policies, and therefore I could be in breach of contract if I do XYZ. A lot of this is changing. There are a lot of different accounts that one can get with these different platforms with varying degrees of security and or we're not going to train on your data, but they still snoop it. Okay.
Wow.
And I'm not going to get into something very provocative here, but there were a lot of super predictors and people out there who were spied on and farmed for their data. Okay. And I know all too well about this. So it's
Right.
important that people know before you step up to the bat, okay, hey, I'm a corporate user. I love to use OpenAI and ChatGPT for all these things. But there's a point where all of a sudden, if you didn't anonymize your data before you put in a spreadsheet,
Right.
you could be liable for something. Also, if you forget to check a box and something gets trained on data, all of a sudden your customer's data is part of the training corpus and it might end up in there. Now, how do I know some of these things? I'm not going to get into completely. I will say this. I have taken home like one of the smaller llama models.
Right.
Maybe it was Wizard LM. I forget which one it was. I was able to, even on my laptop, make this thing cough up nearly all this training data in the form of emails. Okay. So usually you can only get a certain amount of output from one of these things, especially on a small computer, but it was just dumping vast amounts of information. And it was having conversations with me that turned into a fever dream, which is
Right.
basically, it was answering me as a professor through a series of emails between two people. I found out who that professor was. I found out where they worked. I was able to take that data in that model and hunt people down. Okay. So because I work in security and forensics, I have a
I
different
know, I
mind to
know.
all this. Okay, so I'm gonna
No, I
do
don't know. I don't
thing,
know
right?
this, Daniel. This
So
is your
so that
expertise.
the training data is something that, you have to be careful with and have to anonymize. I've had friends out there who published web novel type stuff and it was open for people to see and read, right? But they trained the AI on it and that data ended up in its corpus and my friend was very angry, very, very upset, very anti-AI because of it. Okay. What's next at USAII and what's your next project and what are you working on to promote this?
Well, we do have a cybersecurity
Hmm.
track, and it's not nearly at the level of what you just explained,
Yeah,
Daniel.
yeah, yeah.
That's,
Yeah.
you've got me now thinking, wait a minute, should,
Yeah. You're
my,
gonna be okay.
sure.
Yeah, we just gotta check. You just gotta make sure you patch everything up and make sure you're doing it right. But hey, as long as you're not trying to crack a big code in systems theory or do some kind of groundbreaking medical research, your data is probably fine. That's why I run at home. I have people come to me for projects, okay? And a lot of people around the world will come to me to consult and for their medical devices or their projects, involving healthcare, in fact,
Right,
wide variety of this. And so we'll be on a Zoom meeting and I will bring up a screen share and then I will pull up sovereign AI. I will pull up private, secure, on-prem AI to do our research. I will not use the big players. I will only
right,
use what is local and secure. And then I will give them that data, and they're like, thank you so much for having a regard for my privacy and sanctity of this research because it's
right,
for an MVP, for a value, most viable product. They're doing this to help people and to make money. And so if someone snoops that, it's easy to
right,
just walk away. I mean, in espionage and spying and things like that, if it's kind of like the advice we give people, if you should use a VPN for your internet searches, because I
right,
don't need to, as a cybersecurity specialist, I don't need to see exactly what you're seeing. I can just see where you're going, and then I can just snoop
right,
that. I don't have to snoop you. I can just see where you're going and where you're visiting, and then
right.
research firm X is going and looking at all these papers. I'm going to ghost everything they do so I can stay up to date with where they might be. And that happens. That's real. Okay. And it's one of those things where an NDA isn't going to stop someone from taking your data and changing it and doing something to it. There's so many points of interception, so many vectors of attack. So I'm always, and that's why I do my best to turn people onto this because you're going to find yourself in a situation where you need to be ultimately private and you can't, or because you don't know how,
Right,
or you didn't have the tools. And I can quickly do this for someone in a matter of 10 minutes, 15 minutes, get you set up.
right,
You're running local, free, and with the choices and
right.
options that to use what might work for you best. It's not
Well,
everything,
once,
but it's close.
yeah, I mean, I had a quick question for you. Once quantum matures, is it possibly going to be un unbreakable, or are we
It's
able to
breakable.
stop the entry point?
Nothing is 100%. Nothing ever. There will always be a way around something. It's just a matter of time. It really is. So, in
Just
post quantum security is kind of what they call it now because we're in a post quantum world. That means that we're on the. I have friends that have access to quantum computing systems in Japan at a university for their ends for what they do for their company. It's pretty wild. Okay. I know what they do, and it's amazing. And you can get access to if you need it. It's for machine learning. It's for very fast, very accurate neural network training that you normally would take a long time to do it with many points. They're
right,
doing it, and it's amazing and it's very useful. But to have access to the equipment, it's just those few people that would have access to a quantum computer. Then you
yeah,
have what percentage of those people are swayable or are exploitable by money, okay, to let you do something or use something or get me this information, right? Um,
right,
and that's one thing, but to purely use it to crack passwords is another, right?
right,
And the way that passwords work and key agreements, you got the Diffie-Hellman key agreement that's coming up for an update real soon here. It's like in some cases, I don't need your password to get in. I can use a buffer overflow and an
right,
injection. You can use so many different other points. It's like I don't need the key. I'll break in. I'll break a window. I don't need a window. I've got dynamite. there's all these varying degrees of where are you coming at it, right? So
Right.
security is a big topic, and safety and security are like two different things though. Like safety is like, did the AI tell you something correct? Security is like, did someone snoop what the AI told you, right? Or someone
Right, right,
using
right.
it? 'Cause I can take and build a bot, okay, that looks like a Unix terminal, a bash shell, and someone's using it like a bash shell and it responds just like it's in a bash terminal, but it's actually doing
Right.
other things. And I can fake that whole thing out. The security and safety issues are all over the place. Okay.
Yeah,
Learn a lot. I learned a lot
it's,
from some really good
yeah,
exploits recently because
just
you could poison
yeah,
your
just happened.
documents. You could
Just
make
happened
things.
to me. My phone was
Uh-huh.
hacked to the point where I have to get a new phone. That it's just in there and will never be able to be taken out.
Wow.
Their
Wow.
Apple is
Okay.
like, it's your phone, have to buy a new one. I'm like, it's that bad? They're like, they not only did they get in, but they
Uh-huh.
live in there and they're unable to be taken out.
Yeah, that's right. I understand how that can be done. That's right. It's up in the firmware too. Yeah, and yeah, you're gonna have to secure that for sure. Um, but yeah, there's just a lot. I mean, and back to quantum. I mean, there's a lot of fibs and far overreaching, just outright lies about stuff with quantum
Right.
these days, and who's got what. And Microsoft doctors a lot of their findings for the Minerva chip, or if I'm saying that right, you know. And a lot of people were just like, oh, really worried about it. There goes our passwords. Like, look, people, not everybody has access to this technology. It
Yeah.
costs a lot of money to keep it cold with liquid helium. Like this stuff is very flaky too. Like the error correction techniques and things that go on for quantum is way different than a normal hard drive and file systems. Although similar, in the sense that there is error correction at all, it's still a very disputed area, in terms of what's really efficient, right?
Oh,
So, but we call it post-quantum security, and it's in a world where it's already that rabbit's out of the hat.
yeah.
We have to rethink about a lot of approaches and things. Okay, so,
No,
um,
I was
yeah,
just going to say, I had the opportunity to go to IBM Research Center.
hmm
Uh, this is outside of New York City, and a lot of their research on quantum computing is done there. So I was able to get a tour of the quantum computers that had just come out, and they shared
hmm
with me like where they are in the United States, where they are in the globe. And you're
yeah,
right, it's just not that many out there. There's
yeah,
like
it's
two
it's
in Japan,
uh-huh,
one or two in the United States,
uh-huh.
because
It's
they're so expensive. First of all, I think it's like
yeah.
$500 million, and then
Uh-huh.
just the size and the
Yeah.
cost to
Engineering feat. It's an engineering feat. Even if you have all the money and all the greatest minds and all the resource, you're still crossing your fingers, hoping you don't do XYZ a little bit wrong or different. There's so many moving parts to that, okay? And until we're in manufacturing at the exact replicate level of with metamaterials, not just
yeah,
3D printing, okay, but metamaterials and some other techniques I'm connected to, then we can ditch the low temperature stuff and go at room temperature with all of this. That's when you're going to really worry, is when everybody has it on their watch or whatever, right? It's just you becomes another ubiquitous thing, and then we're all of a sudden having to adopt quantum encryption, and everybody that's the new standard, right? There's always going to be this next level. Think about I am such a nerd and read so much, okay? And I love reading about espionage and code cracking and also just language and the nature of
right,
language, all these things. And so a long time ago, you'd have varying ways of sending a secure letter. They would have these odd shaped sticks or staves, and they would
right.
wrap a rope around it, right? And that rope would line up a certain way, and the message would go across it in notches, and that would get delivered to
Wow,
another tribe. And they would take that, and unless you had the right size stick to decrypt it, right? Different shapes to it, and you wrap that around there, and you see where things line up,
wow.
right? There's all these exploits, though, in something like that. It's like, oh, my password's really long. You'll never be able to guess it. Well, cool. I'm
Right,
gonna use a buffer overrun injection technique. I don't need your password, right? So when you think
right,
about quantum, like, and the ability to automate things, yeah, man, if the wrong person got a hold of a quantum computer and was smart with AI integrations and automation, they would be able to automate the cracking of, groups, large swaths, and groups of people, and just
right.
getting slowly gathering data and then doing this and that. It has to be the people who really have that knowledge are the ones doing the bigger jobs. No, I say it like that, but it's a big crime job, and you sit for a long time. My
Well, the thing
friends.
is, what you said about the temperature, right? If they solve that and it can be at room temperature,
Hmm.
then it becomes ubiquitous. Like
Yeah.
I was always like with the quantum computer, I'm like, what's that big chandelier do? And they're like,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
they're like, that's just the cooling system. So I'm like,
Right.
what is the quantum computer? And they're like, it's this little penny-sized
Uh-huh.
thing. I'm like,
Uh-huh.
so that penny-sized thing is the only important thing that's
Uh-huh.
important. They're like, well, the
Right.
chandelier brings it down to what, minus 4,000 degrees,
Yeah, coming
and
close
it's
to
that
zero K.
temperature.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's such an unstable thing too, and so fickle. I mean, a lot like decades and decades and decades ago, the same technology sits with bubble chambers and Bose-Einsteinian condensates, that being liquid helium, and you could see a lot of really cool things happen in that world, and that's how we understood quantum. That's where we got a lot of learn about a lot of different particles was in the bubble chambers. So you go way down miles into the earth and you shield all that stuff out, and then you have this what's called a bubble chamber, and it is the quietest, most empty thing ever, except for you've got your Bose-Einsteinian condensate, other things keeping this cool. And then all of a sudden, things that would, gamma rays and other things that neutrinos, different stuff like that, all of a sudden, boom, just instantly emerge inside of this thing through all these layers of sediment and earth and concrete. And they're really seeing the small things there. Yeah, it's so fickle, right? And then to turn around
yeah,
and create a quantum computing system out of something like that is just outrageous. We are living a sci-fi dream right now to be here. But it's full of errors, and so those systems are just full of it. People don't know, a computer hard drive or like, let's say a CD. You're listening to an audio CD. It's the
right.
90s, the early 2000s, and it has a spiral like a record. It's reading from the
Yes,
inside out, instead of the outside in, and it has this channel of code. And if you get a scratch that's a certain size, you'll hear a click. But if it's small enough, it'll be within the bounds of error correction to correct. So it fills up the buffer and it's streaming. You're driving down the road, you're listening to your song. Your song's really playing about a second behind where it's actually streamed in the buffer. So if there's any error correction to happen, you won't hear it. But if there's a big
wow,
enough scratch or a radial gash in it, it'll
right,
be like,
right,
you'll hear it, right? Or a bump will go down the road.
right.
All this stuff happens in our brain too.
Don't you just have to blow on the CD and it
Ah,
works?
it's like a cartridge, right? That could be
Or
like
you
that.
just be like, take it out and blow on it. And
What
then
you do is you take white toothpaste and you take a cloth and like a polish rag and you can make a round bit on that and you buff
right,
that out so there's no aberrations or
right.
sharp refractions that coming off of that, and that's how you would get around that, right?
Oh,
I used to hide data on CDs and stuff. That we would you could take a drill and put an eighth inch hole through a CD and it would error
right.
correct around it, right? Because I understood all this stuff. But we would take and write on it and then burn the CD and then erase the ink, and you would have a hidden message written in the ink of the CD, and you would never hear it. But if you flip the disc over, it would be like, "Hi, this is Dan. Here's your password." Oh yeah.
Wow.
Or I could hide that data in the subchannels and stuff. So, yeah. I picked this stuff apart
Jeez.
as a hacker. That's what I did for years and working with digital forensics and file systems and devices, from medical to other
Right.
analysis type stuff.
Daniel, I'm happy you're out there, right? I
Yeah,
have I have to worry about this, but I know you're out there
yeah.
trying to solve it.
Uh-huh. And as educators, we have to have each other's backs on this stuff and what tools to look out for and why and everything else. Because I mean, we have long-term goals right now, you and I. I mean, I know you're gearing up to go and do some things in Malaysia. I am gearing up for a few things in different places, including there. And our goal is to bring with us the consistent perspective that really contains the seed of knowledge, which is here's the basics, here's where the edge of this is. Here's how
Right,
you can determine where the edge of that is for yourself and where you should be careful with your data, and give people that sort of decision tree thinking mentality, that critical thinking to just navigate real quick. Go, oh yeah, I probably shouldn't do that here, without having
right,
to look at a piece of paper. Just go, this is new common sense. Common sense. Don't share your passwords. We all know that, right? But that
right.
wasn't common sense a long time ago. And email was
Yeah,
a buzzword. So as
right.
things grow and things are adopted, that can be blazingly fast. And if we look back and go, oh yeah, I was doing that wrong. How much data have I fed this system? It's shouldn't have been fed into it, you know. But
Yeah,
I feel
we've
better
got,
knowing that I feel better knowing you guys are out there doing this on in all these sectors too, because it takes a village.
yeah,
And it's good knowing that I can turn to you guys for this as well. I was very happy to have met you because I thought
too.
to myself, great, okay, these guys are already involved where I'm going, and we can work and be in lock, you know, and just be on the
Right.
same page as educators in this and people who help. So it's phenomenal. So so tell us what's next and what you guys are doing there.
What we're doing is working closely with the government
Uh-huh.
in their setting the AI initiatives, and
Okay.
then working with local partners to use our certification
Mm-hmm.
process, which includes an exam, in some cases,
Mm-hmm.
submitting a transformation plan to,
Mm-hmm.
make sure every citizen has enough knowledge to
Mm-hmm.
be able to then progress themselves. But then once again, it's at every level, right?
Yeah.
It can from the shop floor
Uh-huh.
up to the C-suite, right?
Right. Right.
To use the car analogy, the
Mm-hmm.
people on the floor who are manufacturing the cars need to learn AI just as much as the HR exec
Mm-hmm.
or CEO,
Right.
right? If
Uh-huh.
you only give the knowledge to the C level,
Uh-huh.
you got what, 15 people who understand AI. You have to have
Mm-hmm.
the entire organization. And we're
Yeah.
working with companies now to do, okay, a foundational program for 100,000 employees.
Mm-hmm.
And then we can break it down to the shop floor. We can break it down to all the engineers, HR. We can break it down to various other departments, make it department specific. So
Right.
really the whole organization, the whole country, the
Mm-hmm.
whole university, the whole high school, because there's really, you can't leave, it's for everyone and
Mm-hmm.
everybody, and you
That's
can't leave
right.
anybody behind.
Uh-huh. It's so true. And a lot of this, and I have to bring this up too. This is a big topic. And because you're such an avid user and an educator and well thought out and experienced, I have to ask you this, is that do you ever feel like you've reached a all right, I used AI to a point where I started using it less. Okay. And I
Right,
say that in that I got a lot done and I'm filling my plate, my queue back up with other things to do and use it for. But I evolve and I grow with it. Okay. And so it helps remind me how to think procedurally in some situations. Okay. And go, oh, yeah, you could just summarize this to some bullet points in your head and understand it. Don't forget to minimize things and just get there. Right. So, uh, but there are a lot of tools out there as we go that we adopt and we don't even realize how powerful they are. And then
right.
so what you and I learn as we go can be very valuable to all of our cohorts, as you could say, And so when you educate a leader or someone who's in manufacturing, no matter if they're in the same company or not, they're going to have different tooling at the end of the day. We
Right.
need to know the generality of this safety, but then here you go to this side, you go to this side for what you're using this for. Everybody's got their own niche, and what they're working with. But the big trend right now is not just augmenting one person, but really restructuring your whole organization with AI. And I'm not talking about forcing technology. I'm not talking about just being a fanatical adopter. Nothing like that. Nothing like that. Not like I'm getting
Right.
left behind not doing it. But as a philosophy of approach, as to see how you can truly augment the whole company with it to change the workflows in a way that makes sense. The way that we're doing something might be to change the landscape of the silos, to bring everything together, to create a convergence zone for knowledge, to make that accessible. I think that's where a lot of things are going right now. And it's
And
exciting.
yeah, I find that I'm at the point where if it was taken away,
Hmm.
I really wouldn't be able to operate as
Hmm.
I've now become used to. So it's almost
Yeah.
like that's the litmus test, right?
Yeah.
To get everybody to the point where they're using it,
Uh-huh.
where if you took it away, they wouldn't
Uh-huh.
be able to function at that same level,
Uh-huh.
right?
Right. Yeah. You've
So
you've changed your goals though, too. Keep in mind, like as we go, and this is great though, because it's good to hit this wall because you don't want to go with old thinking. Old thinking is, oh, we'll replace all these people. No, you'll have the ability to keep everybody and have tripled your workforce without having to pay so much more for it. Like you upskill people and help let them augment their own workflows with AI safely, okay, and with the right tools that are effective, then all of a sudden you're getting so much more than you expected. So old thinking is like, let's save money, let's replace people one to one. No, let's outfit and outrig everything with the augmentation of AI tooling and expand and multiply our workforce and be a bigger company with the same amount of employees, right? With the same footprint, but with a bigger reach. So you and I mean, look, someone was talking about lazy writing and how, oh, AI is making me a bad writer. I'm like, well, you're writing wrong. You're not thinking for yourself to begin with, I don't think, right? There are ways to use it where it does not take away your intellect. And
Yeah.
I have friends with so many high school teachers that use this. There are big speakers out there too in many different countries who are like, we're doing it right. We're upping our game as educators. We're changing the tests. We're giving the kids the tools, but then we're showing them, hey, here's where the new challenge is. You can use this AI all you want, but like we've restructured our approach. And to watch that happen from 2023 around, actually 2024 is when I was really started to see it take off. And I have
Yeah.
friends in California at Orange County schools, and they were doing student-led initiatives and student-led conventions for AI. And it was just like it was just like such a heartfelt affair. I mean, like people were like crying. It was so beautiful, that all these students that came together to work together on this. Not everywhere has that infrastructure to do that. And
Right.
that's why one of the reasons I do what I do is to enable and empower people through community and individual participation, in the open source and letting it work for you, letting the community help you. We just want everybody happy and healthy,
Right.
and that's how I see the open source community. I just want everybody living a great life. I'm not getting paid for this. This is something I do out of the love for humanity and wanting to see people grow and learn. Right now, I do get paid for some things, but a large amount of what I do is this charity effort of really spreading that information and knowledge, which I feel so at one with. Um, but it's important to get out there and get these certifications to people and show them how approachable it is. So if you yourself want to get a certification or help upskill your employees or anyone at your business and your corporation, I highly recommend the United States AI Institute for this because at your own pace, at your own schedule, as a working professional, you can approach these very useful certifications and feel like that you've actually gained something from it. It's for everybody, and I highly recommend it. That's USAII.org, and just take
Yes.
a look at what they have. Are there any other things you'd like to highlight there that we could point people to, or particular programs? I know I have some screens up. I've been looking across all of your AI ethics, examination policies, and
No. Yeah.
partnerships. So, mhm.
Nothing to add. I just wanted to personally thank you.
Yeah,
I've had the opportunity to, see a lot of a lot of your work, and I've learned a lot from our conversations. And it was an honor to be on the show.
yeah,
Thank you.
excellent. Yeah, and thank you so much for taking that time to come on. And again, I was just so tickled to meet you because the serendipity of what we're working on together, but not even knowing each other. Now we're friends, and now we're a part of this community that's helping a lot of people. Uh, we'll be going forward from here. Maybe at some point you can come back on with some more folks, and we can talk about what's happened in the last, the next 6 months, and
Right.
revisit and see where things are at because you and I have a lot of work together to do too out there to help people, and which I look forward to. So thank you for taking the time to do this. Thank you for what you do. It's really exciting to see someone who actually comes from a true policy background get into this. A lot of us have had to adopt that mentality later as we thought about, the odds and ends of security policy versus international policy. Okay, that's a big world. Okay, uh, but the reach that we've got, the people that we're helping, we're in it to win it, man. And there's a lot of good folks out there that
Right.
are doing their part. And so it's right for all of us involved. So thank you so much, Mike.
Great
I
to
really appreciate your
Yeah.
time. And let's talk soon. And we have a lot of work ahead of us. So more power to you. And
Regard.
for
Yeah.
everybody else out there, Mike Spaeth, thank you so much. I'm Dan Wilson. This is the AI Think Tank podcast. Everybody have a wonderful day, and we'll be talking to you very soon. Thank you so much. Goodbye.